Ladies and gentlemen, it is budget day. So, what I'm going to do is give you a brief rundown of how today's going to go and how this week is going to go. And the important thing is when the vote to actually pass the budget is actually going to happen. Let's start with that. So, first thing to know about today is there will not be a vote on the budget today. That's not even going to happen probably this week. So, if you were expecting a lot of drama on whether the government will fall today or not, that's not going to happen this week. Most likely, that is going to happen the week after the next constituency week, which is next week. So, week of the 17th, that's when we're probably going to see the vote. Most likely on the Tuesday, if I had to guess. So, there's that. Second thing, here's how today's going to go. So, this morning, the government is going to be dropping the budget in what's called Lockup. And what Lockup is, that is a room where they put the budget down and the media is allowed in to actually view the budget to kind of prepare for their coverage that's going to be later in the day. And they are not allowed to send any information to any external folks. So they actually have to stay there, with the budget. In the afternoon, this is when the budget is actually going to be formally tabled by the finance minister, Francois-Philippe Champagne. Right after he tables it, he's going to be delivering a long speech as to why the budget's so great and why Canadians should cheer. After that, we're going to see a speech probably from Pierre Poilievre in response to that. And then following that speech, the formal tabling is basically done, and now we start to get into structured debate on the budget. That will typically last for 4 or 5 days. Now, they don't debate it continuously throughout Parliament. There'll be specific blocks that they will be carving out to actually give the budget time for debate. And what they will be voting on this week, most likely on Friday, are going to be proposed amendments to the budget. So that those will come from the Conservatives and the Bloc and the other parties. And then once this week ends, now we go to constituency week. So the House rises for next week, and then they come back the following week, and then the real drama begins, because that's where we go into this confidence vote. As to whether or not the budget will pass. And since it is a confidence vote, if it does not pass, then that means that the House does not have confidence in the government, and the government will fall and then most likely go to an election. Most likely this budget is going to pass. We've been saying for a couple months now that this is most likely going to pass because the Conservatives don't want an election. The NDP definitely don't want an election. They're in the middle of a leadership race. And the Bloc, they're not interested in an election right now, based on the polls, right? Polls are at around 50-50. And that's not really a confident position you want to be running into an election with. Now, the Liberals, they may want an election, but the issue is you can't play this game of chicken specifically at this point in time with Canadians, because Canadians are not going to favor the party or parties that trigger an election. Our position has been whoever triggers an election this fall loses. So what we heard yesterday is something that we postulated, that the NDP are open to abstention, meaning they may not vote against the budget, they may not vote for the budget, they may just choose not to vote at all. Or some of them will vote against it just so they can say that they voted against the budget, and then the rest of them will abstain. This will allow the budget to pass because Conservatives and Bloc are expected to vote against it. This allows the Liberal government to wear this mammoth disaster of a budget that we're all expecting. So that's most likely what's going to happen when the vote actually comes. And it's going to be a bit more painful for Canadians for the next 6 months or so, but it's going to be necessary in order for the swing voters to actually realize what this government actually is versus what it was actually promised to do. Now, we've already seen a swing in the polls, or all the way down to this 50-50 position that we're in now versus the 12-point lead that they had over in the summer, because Carney hasn't done anything. And the other day, as we showed, even CBC and Rosemary Barton had to admit that Carney has just made everything worse for Canadians, and Canadians are starting to see that. So we're going to be bringing on a couple of guests that will be dropping in some episodes over the next 24 or 48 hours to comment on the budget. One of them is actually going to be in Lockup with the budget this morning, so we're looking forward to that. And the other one has been in government before and seen many budgets come and go. So we're going to get their input on what they think of this budget. Now, the last thing that you need to know actually has nothing to do with the budget. So earlier we talked about the Terrebonne riding and the court challenge, and what the Liberal appointed judge actually decided very quickly on that court challenge, where the Liberals won by 1 vote in that riding. And this is the riding where afterwards it was subsequently learned that there was some voters that put up their hands and say, hey, I actually had a special mail-in ballot and it was returned to me because the wrong address for Elections Canada was actually put on the ballot, so it could never actually get back to the office to be counted. And there was during the actual court challenge, we learned that there was 40 ballots that actually had that issue. Now, our analysis on the decision showed that the judge improperly applied the law, and we implored the bloc to appeal this, because this would be very, very dangerous in precedent setting. The judge was essentially saying, well, in any case, in any administrative error, you could never overturn an election, which is not holding Elections Canada to any sort of accountability whatsoever. So, what does this mean? Well, yesterday, what we learned is Nathalie St-Clair Desgagnés, the Bloc candidate who was the former MP for Terrebonne, who was unsuccessful in the last election, she has announced that they are officially challenging the ruling and are going to appeal to the Supreme Court. This is a really good thing, because the Supreme Court will view the Superior Court judge's ruling and whether they applied the law correctly or not. And the Supreme Court is what we based our logic on in terms of that Superior Court judge actually applying the law incorrectly, because the Supreme Court reviewed a case similar to this many years ago, and it's really the precedent that is going to be used going forward. So we're hopeful and confident that if the Supreme Court applies the law correctly, then this will be overturned and there will be a by-election called as a result of voter irregularity. So that's happening, and it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. So there's a lot of drama going on in Canadian politics this week, folks, but there's going to be extensive debate on this budget, and there's going to be amendments thrown in, and we have to just hold our breath and keep going and make sure that the Liberals wear this budget, because Canadians are going to have to see that when a Liberal government is in power, especially this Mark Carney alleged genius businessman spending $100 billion in deficit, that's $2,500 more in debt that every Canadian is per year, it's not going to end well for this country, and it's not going to end well for the Liberals, because they're going to have to wear this, and it's going to show that no matter what the Liberals do, all they seem to want to do is spend our money to try and get out of a hole. So what do they do to try and get out of a hole? Do they get a ladder? Do they start filling it in? No, they dig deeper, and the hole just gets even further. So that's your summary of what you need to know today for Budget Day in Canada in 2025. And as things break, and if there's any significant updates, come back to Northern Perspective and we'll break it all down.